Welcome back to Niagara at Noon. I'm Stephanie Sabourin. 12 General Motors Canada dealerships that were among the 240 the automaker ordered closed in May are suing the company. Joining us now, President of Slessor Pontiac Buick GMC, Rob Slessor. Welcome to the show, Rob.
Good afternoon, Stephanie. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. I understand you're one of those 12 dealers.
We are.
Why are you suing GM Canada?
Well, we felt that they've not lived up to their expectations with regard to our dealer sales and service agreement.
And so with this lawsuit, what are you hoping to get out of it?
Well, primarily we're looking at compensation for the loss of our business reputation, our customer base that we've acquired over 54 years. We're also looking for an opportunity to remain General Motors dealers at the present time. We felt that by suing them, that may cause them to take a look at the rights and the remedies that were available to us under our sales and service agreement.
We've talked about this before, Rob, too, and I'm surprised that, with GM looking to cut ties, saying they don't want you anymore, that you even want to be part of them still.
Well, again, Stephanie, that's, I'm an automotive man born into an automotive family, and it's a livelihood that I've known for 34 years. My father started this dealership 54 years ago. It's part of me to be an automobile dealer. We enjoyed a good relationship with General Motors. However, as of late, this relationship has been strained. They've provided us a termination notice with no explanation as to the reasons, and we're just disappointed in all of this. To maintain a working relationship with GM, I think is the very least that we can expect at this point, just to fulfill our obligations under our contract. What we do in the future going forward would remain, open after that. But we feel we have an obligation for at least another 5 years.
How long have you been working with GM?
Myself, 34 years.
And before that?
I was right out of high school. I apprenticed under my father right out of high school to learn the business, then take the business over once he decided to retire in 1990. And
your father worked with GM too, right?
That's correct. He started the dealership at this present location in 1955.
What are you optimistic with this lawsuit that it's the way to go, that you're going to end up, a year from now where you want to be?
Well, we're optimistic in the fact that we feel in view of General Motors confirming the termination of the franchise, then at least the necessary compensation and responsibilities will flow to the dealer body that have challenged them. We've all made very large investments in our dealerships, and we've done that, in good faith to General Motors. Our dealer agreement is based on good faith, and we feel they've violated that. They asked us to make these investments so that we could move forward as General Motors dealers. And now they've blindsided us and pulled the rug out from underneath our feet.
You sound a lot more down than when we first talked about this, Bob. How hard has this all been for you?
Well, it's been a very long trail up to this point, Stephanie, and it is taking its toll on all the dealers that are affected across Canada. But I can only speak from a personal standpoint to say it's been extremely difficult. I've tried as a gentleman to negotiate with General Motors up to the level of vice president. Wrote numerous communications, 7 letters, in fact. Finally got in front of our vice president to discuss our situation, and all to no avail. So the gentleman approach has not worked. We've been left with no alternative but to proceed with a court filing.
President of Slessor Pontiac Buick GMC, Bob Slessor, thank you so much for joining us.
Stephanie, it's always a pleasure.
General Motors of Canada is being sued by 12 of its dealers who are fighting the automaker's effort to shut them down. Among them, Bob Slessor in Grimsby, the 12 among several hundred GM dealers in Canada and the U.S. who were given closure notices 6 months ago by the automaker, which is downsizing. Among other things, the 12 dealers each seeking $1.5 million from GM of Canada. You're listening to Niagara at Noon. Coming up next, Neighborhood News.
the GM dealers who are threatened with losing their dealership, and they're fighting back. They're not settling, and we're going to hear what their grievance is and what they're doing about it. You're listening to The Live Drive with John Tory on Newstalk 1010.
Newstalk 1010.
As you know by now, I'm a free enterpriser. This is no secret. I'm a believer in the marketplace, not to the point where anything goes and the marketplace is always right, but I think the marketplace can resolve a lot of things. Governments making choices instead of the marketplace is often, not always, but often worse than any result the marketplace can produce. The marketplace needs some oversight, and that's why we have laws on misleading advertising and insider trading and a whole bunch of other things. But even with those laws and reasonable enforcement, there are times when greed and other aspects of human nature produce excesses which need to be addressed. See the 2008-9 financial meltdown as a principal example of that. Now, by and large, I'm not in favor of government running a lot of big enterprises. They just don't do it well. See, story just referenced intelligence agencies not talking to each other. We treat hospitals and post-secondary institutions as exceptions, and there are many pluses to that. But even these institutions are still not run in as business-like a way as they might be. Business-like, just in terms of respect for the best way to do things, value for money, and so on. It doesn't mean that private people have to run them. They just be run in a business-like way. Now that brings us to the story of the GM dealers who were told, as part of the rescue or rebuilding or restructuring or whatever you want to call it of that company, the survival of that company, that their franchises were effectively canceled. 240 dealerships slated to be closed. These are, in many cases, family businesses which go back more than one generation, sometimes two generations or more, into which those very families, of course, have invested a lot of sweat equity, let alone huge amounts of money. Now, GM did make offers to the dealers slated to be closed. I'm told the offers were kind of a take-it-or-leave-it proposition and rarely reflected all that had been invested in money, let alone in sweat. But offers of compensation were made. In most cases of the 240, they were accepted. Most of those who accepted closed their doors by the end of 2009. There are, however, a group who say the process is treating them unfairly. They are suing General Motors, claiming they're being treated in a high-handed manner, unfairly, and so on. In the United States, the fate of some of these dealers like this led to legislation requiring an arbitration process to be followed so that these differences and claims of unfairness could be settled by a neutral third party. Here we have no such arbitration process that's been legislated so far, and you always would prefer that not be the case. We do have a lawsuit now asking for damages, asking for an order of the court to have these dealerships stay open, and so on. My thought is this. Clearly, given the declining market share and increased competition, there were too many dealers, GM and others. Everyone, including the dealers, knew that. That's the marketplace deciding, not the government or some other kind of tribunal. GM seems to be on the way to sorting out most of this, and while there may have been some take it or leave it to the way they conducted themselves, the majority of dealers slated to close have accepted the offer. Now it remains to deal with the tougher cases, as is always the case, tougher for whatever reason. And that may not be just a matter for the marketplace. The courts aren't necessarily the best place either. In fact, one might argue the courts are a bad place to deal with these things. They're expensive, it takes huge amounts of time, and of course the answer is often a winner-take-all answer. So rather than legislate, it would seem best for me to see this arbitrated, and it looks like it might go there, speed it up before the court thing goes too far, because only the lawyers get entrenched, only the lawyers get rich. It takes a long time to find an answer. In a moment, we're going to talk to one of those dealers who's not happy, Bob Slessor from Grimsby, and he'll tell us about the lawsuit that has been commenced. Slessor is a General Motors dealer in Grimsby. I guess, Mr. Slessor, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, John.
I guess they're trying to make you a former dealer, and you're standing up and asserting your rights, and tell me why.
Well, we feel that General Motors has breached their sales and service agreement with us, John.
I talked in my opening comments about the fact that people like yourselves have put a lot of sweat equity and, of course, a lot of money into these dealerships. I know they have settled up with many of the dealers across the country, but not all. In your view, why are they treating you unfairly? What is it about what they're doing that's unfair to you, and given your history with them?
Well, we've got a long history with General Motors. We're 54 years as a Pontiac Buick dealer in this community at the original location. I'm a second generation to my father, and we've made a very substantial investment in our dealership, about $3.5 million, no less than about 5 years ago. And we just feel that General Motors does not really have the right to terminate in the manner in which they've done so.
So if you were to sort of find a proper way in which they could do it that would satisfy you and some of the others that you're working with now in this lawsuit, what would that be?
Well, I guess the first issue there would be a fair and equitable compensation for a business investment.
So you're talking, for example, about the $3.5 million you just invested, you said a few years ago, and I presume upgrading your dealership, and you'd like to get as much or all of that back.
Absolutely. These were updates that were mandated by the manufacturer to move forward as a General Motors dealer. It was called the General Motors Image Process. And we bought into that process, as did most of the dealers across Canada, and we expect a fair and reasonable return on our investment.
So, again, you're saying that at that time, a number of years ago, they wanted to enhance the image of their dealerships. They said in order to do that, you must do, and I assume they said you must do this, this, and this, or we're going to be taking steps against you. You did it, and you invested the $3 million, and now they've canceled your dealership.
That's correct, and without nearly an opportunity to see any kind of return on that investment.
Now, I talked about the fact the courts are slow, and you know that just because it takes years to have these trials come to court, it can be kind of a winner-take-all thing. The lawyers, do well because they get paid big bills. And I suggested maybe some kind of an arbitration. It's been hinted at here in Canada. It's happening by law in the United States. Where do you come out on that?
Well, in Canada, it's a different situation. Canada's operations never went into bankruptcy protection or structured reorganization. That did not happen in Canada, so our sales and service agreements are in full force and effect. In the United States, they did not have that option. They were subject to bankruptcy. But respect to your initial question there, John, General Motors has been trying to divide the group and send us back for an independent and separate arbitration, which I don't feel would be an opportunity for the dealers that have been affected.
But you, I'm sure, must worry about the fact that normally court cases, no matter how quickly you push them forward, lawyers have ways and other people have ways and the courts are jammed up, that you could be 3 years from now still in court, still trying to have this out.
Well, perhaps it's going to take a while. We understand that, but it's a very important question. It goes down to the basic parameters of franchise rights. If my franchise wasn't safe after 54 years and a manufacturer such as General Motors can arbitrarily come along and terminate my franchise once I've met and fulfilled all of their obligations, then whose franchise is really safe? General Motors will set the pattern if they're allowed to get away with this type of a termination and go basically unchallenged. And
just so I'm clear, last question, Mr. Slessor, are you in the meantime in business or out of business, or have they cut you off of supply of cars and parts and all the things you need, or what's going on?
Well, we currently enjoy the full rights of an operating dealership. Our contract expires October 2010, so I am enjoying operations as normal at the present time. Although we're working under this cloud of a termination announcement, it's affecting my employee, of course. They've undermined my customer goodwill, my business reputation. So it's difficult, but we're proceeding as best we can as business as usual.
Well, please keep in touch with us and tell us about events as they unfold. And I appreciate very much the fact you gave us some time this afternoon. Bob Slessor, who's a General Motors dealer in Grimsby, Ontario, one of those suing General Motors about the termination or attempted termination of his franchise. Thanks again.
Thanks again, John, for your time.
You're listening to The Live Drive with John Tory on Newstalk 1010.
Bob Slessor is president of Robert Slessor Pontiac Buick, GMC, company that's been in the biz for 54 years and in the family in Grimsby. But GM has informed them that it's all coming to an end. Bob, good morning.
Good morning, John.
How did you find out about the fate of your dealership from head office?
Well, we received a belated email about 2 hours late coming in.
And was that the method they had told you were going to learn about the fate? I mean, the email is, whenever you hear about somebody breaking up by email, you think, what a cad. So what's a car company doing telling people who've been in the business with them for 54 years that they're severing the relationship via email?
Well, we were appalled by the way they approached the delivery of the message. It was simply an email coming in. It was very terse and to the point, and it was accompanied by a wind-down agreement that the dealers could review and see if they wanted to take part in.
Can you map things out? I don't know a great deal about how the car business works, and I'm curious about the relationship between a dealer and the company that produces the cars, because I'm wondering why they're shutting you guys down. If you guys think you can sell cars, why shouldn't they leave you in business?
Well, we simply don't understand that it does not make sense to the dealer body. Dealers don't cost General Motors money. Dealers are their revenue stream. They're their face to the customer. They provide the services to the customer. We built the relationship with our customer base in Grimsby for over 54 years, and our customers, they're agitated, they're upset, and they're very frustrated.
What's the closest GM dealership now for people in Grimsby?
Well, the closest General Motors dealership would still be in the town of Grimsby. He will be a Chevrolet franchise, but I'm Pontiac Buick GMC brand, and the closest would be Hamilton Mountain or St. Catharines. My customers will have to drive if they prefer to deal with the same brand of dealer. What,
if anything, do you think was the criteria for GM? I mean, why did one of your neighbors remain in the business and you don't?
General Motors won't really share that criteria with us. We've requested that. I've asked for them to define how I was, how this decision was determined. But the best that we can understand is that they were under pressure to reduce their dealer body, and they've made some hasty decisions that will affect their customer base going forward and their ability to sell automobiles.
Your dad, Bob Sr., is still with us, and this must have been a really bitter experience for him.
Well, my father sat across from me at the desk when the email came in because we were waiting, patiently for the information. It was an important day for us. And when I received the information, it was simply a thumbs down, and he was devastated. The look on his face said it all.
How many cars do you estimate that your family has sold over 54 years?
Well, it varies year to year, but we would do anywhere from 350 to 700 new vehicles a year, depending on the year. And over 54 years, that's a lot of automobiles.
So GM has done pretty well by you.
Well, we feel they have. We've continually built the business. We've represented them well in our community, and we've built our community along with General Motors over 54 years. This is how they repaid us.
My guest is Bob Slessor. He's president of Robert Slessor Pontiac Buick GMC in Grimsby, and that dealership is on the list of 240 stores that are slated for closing. And Bob, I understand that at GM's request not long ago, you actually renovated your facility, and I have to presume you had to go and borrow money in order to do that, and you're still in the hole for it.
Oh, that's correct. We have a commercial mortgage to fund $3.5 million worth of renovations to meet their image specifications. It was indicated to me that in order to maintain my future as a dealer, I had to do those renovations and provide a concept for a store that met the General Motors specifications.
And when did that happen?
We completed those renovations in 2003, and of course we've had a little bit of time to try and pay down that debt, but we are in debt for the balance of the renovation costs.
And what's GM's offer to you to wind all this down?
Well, the offer was $532,000, which basically compared to 2 months of our operating expenses. It was not. It was woefully inadequate to cover the costs even of winding down the dealership over time.
And how many workers does this put on the street?
Well, our current employ is 45 people. We normally would carry about 65 people. We had downsized a little bit because of the declining market, but 45 people are affected by this decision.
And when we crunch all of the numbers, I don't want to force you to lay bare your family's finance, but how badly off does this leave the Slessor family after 54 years in the biz?
Well, we will be okay. We've been diligent in operating the business over the years. However, there is a definite financial impact to servicing the debt for our borrowing costs to do the renovations. And going forward, my opportunity to take care of my 45 employees and my very loyal customer base is absolutely compromised at this point.
So at the end of the day, it's probably more than a slap to the face of a company you've been very loyal to.
Well, more than a slap in the face, I would call it a betrayal. Their offer of 30 pieces of silver, as I'll call it, was insulting to the dealer going forward, and we just refused to accept it. I couldn't sell out my customers, nor would I sell out my dedicated employees for the small amount of money that they offered me to move forward.
And Bob Slessor, do you think you're going to stay in the car business or move on?
Oh, absolutely. We'll stay in the car business as best we can. We're looking to rebrand at the present time moving forward. It's something that's in my blood. I've been a car man. I was born into a General Motors family. I have a 34-year career myself as a dealer. And it's just all I know how to do. I want to pursue the car business and stay in it, servicing a customer base that has been very dedicated to me.
Well, good luck with it.
Thank you very much, John.
Bob Slessor on the line from Grimsby, Ontario. President Robert Slessor Pontiac Buick GMC informed by email, sorry, 54 years with GM, and you don't get the license anymore.
You've been in business since the 50s, and you're still going, and you've been through all of the ups and downs and the various economic downturns and upturns. I think it's a no-brainer. You deserve to be in business.
Yeah, you've been doing something right.
Yeah. So, you know what? I'm not surprised that this is happening, but we'll get the lowdown and get Robert Slessor's feelings, which I can imagine. I can imagine he's quite emotional about this whole thing, and this has probably not been very easy on him or his family ever since those announcements were made. 5:20, it's AM 900 CHML. Scott Thompson with the day off today. Jamie West here in his place, and you heard it in the news. A group of Canadian General Motors dealerships suing the company in an attempt to keep their businesses open. The 12 dealerships named in the suit are among 240 to 250 stores that GM Canada plans to close in the next year. And joining us on the line to talk about it is Robert Slessor of Slessor Motors in Grimsby. Robert, thanks for the time this afternoon.
My pleasure, Jamie. A pleasure to be here.
When I heard several months ago about this announcement from GM that they would be closing these stores, and I knew that your dealership was on the chopping block, I got to tell you, I was shocked, and I thought there's going to be more said about this in the days ahead, and now you're taking legal action. Tell me what brought you to today.
Well, what brought us to today, it's been a very long road so far, Jamie, but basically General Motors has voided their contract with us.
And you say that or I guess your lawsuit is trying to say that that's a bit of a breach of the agreement that GM had with your dealership?
Absolutely. All dealers are operating under an agreement called a Dealer Sales and Service Agreement, and we fulfilled our obligations with respect to General Motors, and now we expect them to honor the contracts that they have with us.
Robert, is this a case of the mother company, if you will, GM, setting the bar unrealistically too high for sales figures or for reinvestment in the dealership, that kind of thing? The average person doesn't really understand how that all works.
Well, as far as setting the bar, we've all gone through a procedure called a management review, and I can only speak from my personal perspective with my own dealership, but we met those obligations. We met or exceeded General Motors' criteria. They were the first to admit that, provided us with a report card to that effect. What we didn't get was an explanation as to why they took a viable, productive, and profitable dealership away from us.
You must obviously talk to your colleagues out there in the industry. I know there are at least 11 other dealerships involved in this lawsuit. What's the buzz out there among the dealers on this? What I'm getting at is it likely that as a result of you bringing legal action that GM may turn around and say, maybe we need to rethink this and change their mind? Because I'm also considering how the economy supposedly is starting to come around too.
Well, yes, there's that point. The economy is improving. General Motors seems to be enjoying a few small gains in the marketplace. But basically, there was a promise or an assurance made to our dealership and the other gentlemen that are associated with this lawsuit that as long as they performed up to expectation, we were assured of a 5-year renewal at the very least with our contract. We've all gone ahead and made substantial investments in our dealerships to ensure our long-term viability with General Motors. In my particular case, it was over $3.5 million. And we did this with the anticipation of moving forward in the long term with General Motors to realize a return on our investments.
I think that's the part that people don't realize. That $3.5 million is out of your pocket. That's your business. GM's not footing that bill.
Absolutely not. In fact, they mandated the very specifications that we had to build to. This is a General Motors dealer-specific facility, and right down to the color of the tile on the floor and the furnishings that went into the building.
You know, I wondered, are there any Hamilton dealerships involved in this lawsuit? I'm wondering specifically about the Dubois family here in town, because, it wasn't that long ago that they moved their dealership out of downtown and built a big, beautiful new dealership up on the East Mountain in this city.
Well, categorically, I can state that Mr. Dubois is not involved in this particular lawsuit, but I can sympathize. He was a 72-year dealership based on a family-operated dealership for many years. He elected to take advantage, I guess, of the General Motors wind-down agreement and has signed off on that particular agreement with General Motors.
Emotionally, this has got to be very, very difficult on you and your family. You've been in business since 1950?
1955, my father started the dealership right at this present location, and you are correct, Jamie. It's been absolutely devastating. I'm a car man. I was born into an automotive family. I joined the dealership right out of high school, apprenticed with my father, until his retirement in 1990, and I now have 34 years invested in this livelihood myself, and it's all I know how to do. I've gained a lot of valuable experience, but I just want to go forward as a productive car dealer.
Robert, how much does politics play a part in this? Does GM play favorites generally when it comes to dealers and the people they deal with in the dealer network?
My personal opinion on that is most definitely. In fact, there may have been a situation where there was some preliminary information provided to shore up the defenses of the retained dealers that they've chosen. But again, that's just a personal opinion.
All right. Robert Slessor with Slessor Motors in Grimsby. We appreciate you taking the time and wish you all the best on this, and stay in touch with us and let us know what's happening.
Jamie, most definitely. We appreciate the opportunity to tell our story, and it's always a pleasure to be on your show.
The best to you and your family. Thank you so much.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye. There's Robert Slessor of Slessor Motors in Grimsby. It's 5:26. It's AM 900 CHML.
This is News Talk 1290 Today with Andy Oudman.
Want to move over to the story at GM this morning, because hundreds of dealers in Canada, of course, got the word recently that they are losing their franchise. And, of course, you're curious about what about your GM dealer. Now, you can understand that GM dealers don't want their customers to suddenly think that they're going to lock the doors anytime soon. That is not good for business. So that's why you're seeing some dealers in the London area, for example, with big ads in the paper, "We're still here. We're not going away." Very few of them want to talk to the media for obvious reasons, but one who has been kind enough to talk to us is Bob Slessor. He has the Bob Slessor Pontiac Buick GM dealership in Grimsby, and he joins us this morning. Bob, appreciate you joining us.
Good morning, Andy. How are you?
Bob, bring us up to date. Since the last time we talked to you, you were bitter at General Motors. You're having a bit of a dust-up with them. How do things stand this morning?
Well, the way things stand is we're still technically a terminated dealer with General Motors. We're working through a process of our dealer agreement that allows us for a management review of that decision, and we're proceeding in that direction, trying to provide them with some information they may not have had at the time and let them take a good close look at why they have terminated this dealership.
Okay, but unless you get a review and unless there's a change of heart, your dealership will cease to be a GM dealer when?
We'll cease to be a GM dealer on October 31st, 2010. Some dealers will go out much sooner to that, no later than December 31st of this year. Those are the dealers that took advantage, of course, of the wind-down agreement provided by General Motors.
Okay, so the fall of next year is the end of the line for Bob Slessor Pontiac Buick as we know it.
That is correct.
Okay, and just before we look at the larger picture, what if there is no change of heart on the part of General Motors? What are your plans?
Well, our plans are to try and move forward and service our vast customer base that we've generated over 54 years.
we've got customers demonstrating our loyalty to Slessor Pontiac Buick by the fact that they've indicated to GM, they're writing GM, they're calling GM, they're saying, no Slessor, no more GM. We'll be prepared to support Bob Slessor, shift to the brand that he may represent, and move forward in that regard. So that's what's happening with us. We're looking at rebranding and trying to land an opportunity to take this forward into the next decade.
Have you, Bob Slessor, with your reputation there in Grimsby, been approached by any other car company to carry their product?
Well, we've had some ongoing discussions with various car companies, and I got to be a little bit careful on commenting on that because it's a sensitive issue right now. As you could understand, there's some territorial issues with various manufacturers, and just we have some ongoing discussions.
Okay. Couple of logistical issues. I'm trying to fill in the blanks here for people who have GM products who are wondering about their own GM dealer here in the London area. What advice do you have for people in the London area who have a GM car, who patronize a GM dealership? Should they just be blunt and say, hey, what's the future here? Will you still be here as a GM dealer 2 years from now?
Well, I think I can only speak for my own experiences, but the local GM London dealer, maybe if he is a terminated dealer, and has not signed his wind down agreement, he'll be there to October of 2010. He'll do his best, I'm certain, to take care of his customer base because we're finding very quickly that people don't just buy from General Motors. We're the face, in the community. They're going to buy from the dealer that they've trusted all these years. And moving forward, they're going to probably support that dealer also in his endeavors to remain active in the community if he chooses to remain in the automobile business.
Can you continue as a pseudo GM dealer in the sense of not selling the product but servicing the GM cars that you've sold over the years? For example, parts. What happens to the parts that you're carrying?
Well, they are General Motors original equipment parts. We would not be able to buy direct General Motors part. However, we're making arrangements and looking into opportunities that would allow us to access, say, a jobber part that would be of sufficient quality or like quality. We're also looking at some of General Motors' jobber brands, i.e. the AC Delco brand would be one that we could acquire and be able to sell our consumers. So, to service going forward, we see that as an active opportunity. We've got 24 mechanical bays, and we want to fill them up and take good care of our customers.
What about GM warranty work?
GM warranty work, we would have to refer that to a franchise General Motors dealer. Except for some of the extended warranties, we may be able to get permission to do the General Motors extended warranty at our place of business and then bill General Motors for that work.
For people who did not hear our earlier conversation with you, I mean, you're pretty down on General Motors. Can you summarize your feelings with respect to GM and how they've handled this issue of cutting off hundreds of dealers?
Well, frustration, I guess, is the biggest word. When we look at the current agreement that we have in place right now, the heart of the issue is it speaks to the mutual dependence between General Motors and its dealers, and it speaks to the spirit of cooperation, trust, and confidence in order to achieve those levels of business success. These issues go to the heart of the matter. We feel that General Motors has violated the spirit of cooperation, trust, and confidence, and that'll have to be dealt with. They'll need to be accountable for how they've treated dealers that they've terminated across Canada.
Let me ask you a straight, simple, blunt question. How does it benefit GM of Canada that they would take a Bob Slessor Pontiac GM dealership in Grimsby and cut them off? How does that benefit GM?
Well, we're at a loss to see how there's any benefit to GM. There's been a little bit of a spin coming back from General Motors' side that this somehow saves them money per dealership across Canada. That couldn't be farther from the truth. GM dealers pay their way. They pay for their parts, their cars, their services that they acquire from General Motors. And again, I reiterate, we're the face of GM to the community. So without the dealers, going forward, they will not have the horsepower to sell the volume of cars they need to remain profitable. and we're at a loss to see how this saves them any money whatsoever.
Okay, let's look at the larger picture now, Bob. I know that you've been in touch with a lot of GM dealers right across southwestern Ontario who have or soon will be disenfranchised. What is their mood? How desperate are they getting? And especially for those who have agreed to the wind down this fall, I mean, they have to have the GM sign and everything gone by the end of the year, December the 31st. How desperate are they, and are they starting to do things like cut staff?
Well, they're becoming very desperate because they're faced with an issue. When they signed that agreement, they were not allowed to return any of their unsold new automobiles, their parts or special tools. They've had to be vacant from their premise or at least have the General Motors sign down by December 31st, as you mentioned. So you're seeing now where dealers are approaching other dealers saying, would you buy my parts inventory? I can't send it back. I know dealers that will be done and they're through by July 31st. What that means to the public is just take a look around your local municipality, and that friendly dealer that you're used to going to for servicing just simply won't be there. He's going to be gone. Some of them are going to last a little longer than others based on maybe the level of inventory they have in stock to sell. But they're now becoming very desperate in their move of the product to generate the last few dollars that they can and be able to wind down their business.
Did you say July 31st?
July 31st, I know personally of 3 dealers that they'll finish their operations at the end of this month. In
what area?
I've got to be a little careful again, but I'm going to say Peterborough, North Toronto.
Is it possible that we have some dealers in the London area who could be finished as a GM dealer by the end of this month?
Again, that would be the personal decision of the dealer, but yes, it's definitely possible. They're going to go away. This is something the public has to understand. General Motors has made the decision to terminate these dealers. So they're just not simply going to be there forever. They have to go away, and if they sign the agreement, they can't last any longer than December 2009.
Are most of them, to your knowledge, trying to do a phoenix? Are they trying to rise from the ashes as a used car dealer or in some way reinvent themselves?
Well, dealers are a very resilient breed, and yes, they are trying to do a phoenix. But the problem is there's only so many new car franchises available. There's so many territories that can be represented by new car dealers, and their best efforts and my best efforts, may come up blank. And not everybody can be a used car dealer. The market just won't support us all. So we could be faced with the extinction or the insolvency of our business going forward.
2 questions before we let you go. One, a caller just asked off the air about your dealership in Newmarket. She's dealt with you in that market a number of years and wonders if it is still up and running.
Well, that dealership was represented now by my cousin, Mr. John Slessor, and he's up and running, but he's a member of the terminated dealers, and he did not sign the wind-down agreement at this point, so him and I are having active discussions. But he will go away no later than October 31st of 2010, like I will, and we're going to miss him. He's up 52 years, we're 54 years, there's 106 years of combined experience.
How much bitterness is there out there, Bob, about this issue on the part of those GM dealers who've been there 30, 40, 50 years, and now they're cut off? Thank you for coming. Goodbye.
Well, there is a high level of bitterness and frustration. They don't understand the reasons, the criteria of the decision has never been communicated to us, and we feel it's just simply not right that GM be allowed to do this without at least an explanation.
And what might we see? I know that they've gotten together, these terminated GM dealers. Might we see some kind of court action, or do you expect them to accomplish anything with the fact that they've gotten together?
Well, I think what's important to realize is that the dealers want to remain a partner in most cases with General Motors, and they're going to exhaust the management review process. Failing that, they will seek additional remedies moving forward through the courts, perhaps, to make them whole, to receive fair compensation for their franchise that was taken away.
And one final question, what might we see in the coming weeks? Might we see dealerships closing, as you've already suggested, by the end of July? Might we see job cuts?
You're definitely going to see a reduction in the job market as these dealers have to let their people go. There's probably going to be a slight element of some distressed merchandising of an automobile. It's a buyer's market out right there for a General Motors product as they try to move out the inventories they can't send back. But yes, and business closings, there'll be a lot of them between now and the end of the year.
Wow. It's a very sad story. Bob Slessor, we thank you so much for joining us. Keep in touch, and all the best as you look for options.
Thank you very much, Andy. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning.
Thank you. Class act Bob Slessor, Slessor Pontiac Buick in Grimsby. Short break. We'll be back here on Newstalk 1290 CJBK.
Tim Dennis here. Good morning. 10 minutes after 8 o'clock and into the stretch run before work on this Wednesday. We're going to chat with Robert Slessor about an update on what's been happening with him since he and GM parted company.
This is Newstalk 610 CKTB at 610CKTB.com.
Well, day doesn't go by without a car company in the news one way or the other. And, of course, around here, a lot of people paying very close attention to whatever happens with General Motors. And we talked to Bob Slessor in the past at Slessor Pontiac Buick in Grimsby, and we know that the situation with Robert, with GM saying, okay, no longer. Can we do this? We're cutting back, and you're one of the ones. And well, let's just get an update rather than me kind of reset the whole thing. Let's talk to the man at the center of all of this, Robert Slessor, president of Slessor Pontiac Buick. Hello, Robert.
Good morning, Tim. How are you this morning?
I am well. Update me on about the letter that you got this week.
Well, we've had some very positive news coming out of the Superior Court. General Motors had filed a motion to try and disband our group of 20 dealers and stay our claim and send it back to private arbitration, basically to sever our claim and force us into independent arbitration.
Now, your claim was, just very briefly,
our claim was to sue General Motors for damages for a breach of their duties under our contract and reinstate our dealerships.
Okay. So they tried to get that quashed, and what happened?
They tried very hard to get that quashed. They threw their best effort at it, and Justice Papal of the Superior Court, she's ruled that our claim will be allowed to move forward as a group. We do not have to go through that very private and out of the public eye arbitration process, and we're allowed to pursue this in the open forum of a Superior Court.
So, to reset for people who may not have heard our previous discussions, are you looking to tell General Motors, no, you can't just do this without more compensation, or do you want to continue to be a GM dealer?
Well, our bottom line is that we all want to continue to be General Motors dealers and have our franchises reinstated. But it's also very important to the national dealer body that General Motors be held accountable to their duties under the Franchise Disclosure Act. They simply can't treat franchisees in the manner that they did, and they breached certain duties or obligations under the Act. And it's become an issue of national importance for all franchise dealers across Canada.
So what happens now? Where are you and those of you in the multi-party claim going to go from here?
Well, we're going to move very quickly to request an expedited trial. Once we've got this motion out of the way now, it opens the door for us, and we're ready to go. We want to proceed immediately into a request for expedited trial.
Any idea how long this process may take?
Well, it's been a very long road to this point. GM's put up a formidable battle to try and block this at every turn, and we're hoping that we can accomplish a court schedule within the next 30 days.
So what are you doing now, Bob? I mean, what happens in this purgatory that we're in?
Well, the purgatory is the right word for it. It's been very disturbing for the business process. Our goodwill for our dealerships has been damaged by business reputation and, of course, our business levels. And we're struggling. It's difficult for us, but we feel that justice will prevail. We will have an opportunity here to have this heard in a public gallery and take it out and let the customers hear what General Motors has done to its franchise dealers.
Can you, in the end, work together? I mean, it's almost like a couple, like the War of the Roses, going to court very acrimonious, and then in the end saying, okay, we're going to live together again.
Well, our dealer-manufacturer relationship has definitely been damaged. I don't feel it's been damaged beyond repair. General Motors needs to sit back and simply do the right thing here. They need to address the concerns that have been brought up in the manner in which they terminated franchises, and things can be repaired going forward if they're to take the correct initiative.
Bob, thanks for your candor. Appreciate you talking to us. Thank you.
Always a pleasure, Tim.
Robert Slessor, president of Slessor Pontiac Buick, updating on the dealer's class action lawsuit against General Motors that was dismissed earlier this week. 8:15.
Welcome back to Niagara at noon on 610 CKTB. I'm Lori Walsh. I've got Bob Slessor on the line with me now. Bob Slessor at Slessor Pontiac Buick GMC in Grimsby. Hi, Bob. How are you doing today?
Not too bad. Good afternoon, Lori.
Were you surprised that it was truck sales that kind of led the way?
Well, it was a little bit of a surprise. However, there's some rationalization of the gas prices. Gas has remained affordable this summer as compared to last summer, so trucks are rebounding a little bit for us.
Yeah, well, any new vehicle sales increase is welcome news, that's for sure.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. Now, I wanted to talk to you about what's happening with you. Unfortunately, your dealership is one of the General Motors dealerships that's on the chopping block because of the restructuring. And I know that it's something that, after 54 years, came as a tremendous shock to you.
Oh, we're very frustrated with that decision, and we're working hard trying to explore all our opportunities to maintain our relationship with General Motors.
Is there anything you can do to stop it from happening?
I don't know whether I can stop the decision. That it will be up to General Motors. We're undergoing a process called a management review, requesting that they take a look at their decision and providing them with some additional information that they may not have had at their disposal when they made that decision.
Are you doing this alone, Bob, or are there other dealerships that are coming together on this?
Well, there are other dealerships that are independently going through their management review process, but there has been a banding together of the dealers that have not signed the wind-down agreement that was offered by GM to the terminated dealers. Those dealers that did not sign are showing signs of banding together, grouping together, if you will, and pursuing some other options that are available to them independent of the management review process.
What do you do in a situation like this, Bob? I mean, are you sleeping at night or what?
Well, we're not sleeping very well at this point. It's cut to the fundamental grassroots of our family. We've been, as you mentioned, 54 years with General Motors. We took a lot of pride in that long-term relationship, and we simply don't understand the reasons for the withdrawal of the franchise.
You know, and you're responsible for a lot of people.
Well, we currently have 45 people in our employ. We did restructure a little bit with the market conditions down from 65, but across Canada, if you multiply that by approximately 250 dealers, that's well over 11,000 people.
Yeah. You know, and I think people forget that often when we're talking, you know, when it's a big story like this and you're talking about, General Motors or any other large car maker, and you're all the numbers flying around and everything, you forget that these are people that work at these dealerships that have got to feed their families, and so it goes.
Real people, and it creates real problems. And one thing I'd like to mention is that, in our existing dealer agreement that I'm currently operating under, it speaks to a mutual dependence between General Motors and its dealers in order that they can recognize opportunities for business success. And it also alludes to a thing of, a spirit of cooperation, trust, and confidence. Well, these go to the heart of the issue. How is the withdrawal of a franchise within the realms of a spirit of cooperation, trust, and building confidence in General Motors? We don't understand this, and we've got a lot of difficulty with that, and that could form the crux of our process going forward.
So you're exploring all your options. I guess it's safe to say that at this point, or continuing to explore what you can do.
Absolutely. This is an ongoing process, so we would like to exhaust all of our remedies that are available under the General Motors terms at the present time. That would be my preference, to remain a good partner of General Motors, but failing that, we'll have to take a look at some of the other options.
Do you allow yourself at this point to think about that, worst case scenario, or maybe it's not a worst case scenario, moving forward? If it's not to be, it's not to be, and how do you move forward?
Well, at some point, if it is not to be, then we'll have to accept that. We are prepared to move forward. We'll look at rebranding opportunities. We'll look at independent service opportunities, perhaps even used car opportunities. But it's difficult to accept, knowing that we spent basically 2 lifetimes, my father's and myself now, building this dealership, growing with the community. I was born in this community, and it's just become part of our everyday process. And it's going to be hard not to maintain that relationship with General Motors.
And was it your hope, Bob, that there would be another generation to continue on?
Oh, absolutely. I have 2 daughters and 2 boys, and my eldest daughter's in the dealership with me today. And I would say grooming my 2 younger fellows to come through, hoping to take it to that 3rd generation as my father gave me that opportunity.
Yeah, a lot of pride in a family business, really.
Very much so, and this is what's cut us so badly. It's hurt us very deeply, and I'm certain that other dealers that speak to my same circumstances.
So what is your message to customers today?
My message to customers today is that we are business as usual. I will be operating through on my normal contract October 31st of 2010. And we're going to do our best to service our customer base and maintain that customer base with respect to whatever sign we fly. We've had a lot of feedback from our customers indicating that they're prepared to jump brands just to remain with the Slessor operation going forward.
Well, it's that attention to customer service that people like that.
Well, I agree. We work very, very hard at trying to demonstrate the proper business principles throughout, over a half a century. And people respect that. They know that we've treated them fairly, and that as problems arise, we deal with those problems face on and try to go towards good customer service, making our decisions. We've done this in the realm of building a business, hoping to move it forward for many generations, and we're disturbed by the fact that we're not going to be allowed to do that.
Well, fight the good fight, Bob.
I thank you for your time, Laurie. It's always a pleasure.
Bob Slessor at Slessor Pontiac Buick GMC in Grimsby. 54 years in business, and then he learned that the dealership would close. Got an email. That's how he found out. So they are, exploring their options. He's certainly not alone. There are dealerships right across the country dealing with this. This is 610 CKTB.
It's 6:19. You're listening to the 6 o'clock news hour. I'm Stephanie Sabourin. There are new opportunities for former GM and Chrysler dealers. Franchise dealers generally restricted from selling outside the U.S., but now the dealers cut loose are free to sell their vehicles for export. Joining us now, Bob Slessor, president of Slessor Pontiac Buick GMC in Grimsby. Slessor's was notified in an email after 50-some-odd years with GM that their contract was being revoked. Welcome to the show, Bob.
Welcome, Stephanie. Good to be here.
Is this something you'd be considering, is looking at the export market?
That's one thing we haven't considered to date, but it would be an opportunity available to us. Currently, I am still operating under GM's contract, so I would be restricted for a few more months yet.
And the reason that you're operating is because you didn't sign the wind-down agreement, right?
That is correct. We refused to take their wind-down offer and are now operating under our current dealer sales and service agreement.
So where does that leave you? How long do you have under that then?
That particular agreement runs through to October 31st of 2010.
And what are you doing? Are you fighting at this point to try to stay with GM?
Well, we've filed a request for a management review. Basically what that means is we'd like them to review the reasons behind the decision and share them with us. And hopefully we'll be able to maintain our relationship going forward with General Motors once we've provided them with some of the information that they may not have access to when they made that decision.
Bob, I'm curious. Why fight to stay with a company that has said it doesn't want you?
Well, I guess it's more than just a franchise to the Slessor family. It's something that, my father started the business back in 1955 at this very location, and I grew up into the business and joined him in 1974. So it's really something that I've always done. I've been a General Motors dealer. All my training is in the GM side of the automotive market. And we just feel that they've made some hasty decisions, probably misinformed decisions, to meet deadlines put forth to them for some of the monies that they were after to continue their operations. And we'd like them to have another look at it. I don't want to give up on General Motors quite that quickly.
So while this was perhaps a business decision for them, it's more personal for you.
Very, very personal for the Slessor family. We took so much pride in representing their brands and their products, and I must say we've done a good job with it for them in the Grimsby area. The community's growing along with us, and a lot of people driving our Pontiac Buick GMC product in this area.
Are you concerned about the future, Bob, or are you just kind of looking to move forward and move on from here?
Well, I guess I'd be less than honest, Stephanie, if I didn't indicate that, yes, I am concerned. General Motors is not normally one to change their mind once they've made a decision. However, we do have this process available to us, and we're trying to take advantage of it. But the concern is that we won't be able to maintain new car representation going forward if we can't land a brand sign to represent our facility here.
And then what do you do in that case?
Well, we would probably look forward to an independent service provider, an independent parts or a wholesale distribution outlet for parts, supplemented by some other automotive, thing like used cars. But our preference is to be a new car dealer.
Do you have any idea on when you will know with the management review process, when that is getting forward and when you'll have a decision on that?
Well, there was a 30-day window in which they must respond under the terms of the current contract. So they have acknowledged receipt of my request and I guess are working on their response. But I assume I'll know by mid-August before that time transpires.
Bob Slessor, president of Slessor Pontiac Buick GMC. Thank you so much for joining us, Bob.
You're welcome, Stephanie. Have a good evening.
They're one of the dealerships out in Grimsby which saw their contracts revoked as General Motors works to restructure. It's 6:24 on 610 CKTB.
A few weeks back, we were talking an awful lot about General Motors every day, stories about restructuring and closures of plants, et cetera, et cetera. And right in the midst of all of that, they announced, of course, that they would close 240 dealerships, more than a third of the 705 dealers across the country. Some when the current franchise agreements ended, others by attrition. And then the story just kind of disappeared because we went on and we talked about other things. But in the midst of this, what happens to the dealerships themselves? What about all the people who work for them? What about the dealers that are doing well but have been targeted by GM for closure because of where they are, for instance? Those kinds of things. Not all the dealerships are happy with this. In fact, some have signed a petition to look into this, and others are taking legal action. Bob Slessor is the president of Slessor Pontiac Buick GMC in Grimsby, who joins us this morning. Mr. Slessor, welcome.
Good morning, Tim. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm curious to know whether or not, Bob, you heard that this was going to be happening long before, or did this come as a big surprise?
Oh, we were totally blindsided by this, Tim. There was no input on behalf of the dealers, no request for discussion or open and candid conversation with General Motors.
So you've got a dealership that's doing okay in Grimsby, right?
Correct. We're facing a challenging time, as all dealerships are at present, but we're holding our own.
And you employ about how many people, Bob?
We currently employ 45. We've restructured down from about the normal 65.
So when you're told that you're closing, what happens? Do they tell you that we're going to give you a certain amount of money and you're out of it, or what's the situation?
Well, we received an email after a 54-year relationship with General Motors. Our demise came by way of email, and they offered us a wind-down payment of $532,000 as long as we agreed to a confidentiality agreement and signed off and basically picked up our tent and went away by the end of this year.
Now, you admit that GM needed to do something to structure the company differently, to streamline, so to speak. You're not questioning that, but you are questioning how deep they cut?
Oh, absolutely. We feel that the cuts are far too deep. They simply won't have the ability to adequately and efficiently service their existing customer base and build the new GM, as they choose to call it, going forward.
What are you doing about this yourself, Bob?
Well, we're investigating our options at the present time. Of course, it's come as a total shock to us. My employees are just, flabbergasted by the decision, as I am myself. But we're taking a look at what's available to us. I have, some opportunity to appeal the decision. We'll exhaust that, and if that doesn't prove fruitful, we may take a look at some other legal options.
When you say, Bob, that you have the opportunity to appeal, is that a legal thing, or is that within the structure of the GM dealership agreement?
Well, because I did not sign their wind-down agreement and take their monetary offer, I have the normal dealer operating agreement and its remedies available to me, which includes the right to appeal.
Now, obviously, we can't mention other names, but you're certainly not alone in this, are you?
Oh, by no means. There's a number of dealers that are in my same position, and we're all very frustrated and of course, devastated by these announcements.
Well, we will stay in touch, and please let us know if you hear anything. We'd like to pass this along to everybody because there are certainly a number of dealers in this particular area, as you are, that are facing this. And Bob, we appreciate your candor. Thank you.
Thank you for the time, Tim. It's been a pleasure.
Bob Slessor is the president of Slessor Pontiac Buick GMC in Grimsby. GM, of course, says the reduction, while difficult, ultimately benefits the customers and the dealers who serve them. The restructured dealer network will have increased profitability driven by increased per-dealer sales, allowing them better resources to serve customers. That comes from GM's Stu Lowe. And he says a smaller, more focused dealer network would save GM costs. There are obviously dealers who are looking at this as the end of long careers with General Motors. And there are a lot of people that work for each of these dealers, all the way from salespeople to mechanics and people who work in the office, et cetera, et cetera. It's an interesting story. And just beginning to come out now that some of them are beginning to push back a little.